Well, for those of you I haven't met, my name is Mark Hussey, and it's my honor to serve as the Vice Chancellor for Agriculture and Life Sciences for the Texas A&M system and as the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences here at Texas A&M University. What I'd like to do is welcome you to this morning's lecture, and I'm very pleased this morning to welcome a national leader to the Texas A&M University campus, Dr. Catherine Woteki. Dr. Woteki serves as the U.S. Department of Agriculture Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics. And we're pleased to have Dr. Woteki on campus yesterday to meet some of our scientists and students, especially since she also serves as USDA's Chief Scientist. Dr. Woteki's lecture today is titled, A Research Agenda for the Food and Agricultural Challenges Ahead. This is a most fitting topic, especially since we are currently featuring the Howard G. Buffett Fragile Photography exhibit here in the AgriLife Center. As you can see, looking at the displays around the room, the powerful need for food security and alleviating hunger worldwide, and a definite challenge for all of us in the land-grant system. In her current role, Dr. Woteki oversees the 4 agencies of the USDA's Research, Education, and Economics Missionary, the Agriculture Research Service, National Institute for Food and Agriculture, Economics Research Service, and the National Agricultural Statistics Service. The National Agricultural Library and the National Arboretum also fall in this mission area. From 1997 to 2001, Dr. Woteki was the first Undersecretary for Food Safety at USDA, where she oversaw the U.S. government food safety policy development and USDA's continuity of operations planning. Before joining USDA, she was Deputy Associate Director for Science in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. During that time, she co-authored the Clinton administration's policy statement, Science in the National Interest. She's also the author of more than 60 refereed articles and 12 books and technical reports. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Catherine Woteki.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussey. I'd like to express my deep appreciation to you, to the faculty here at Texas A&M in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and also to the students for the invitation to do this lecture. It really is an honor for me to be here. And I have to tell you, it is great to be back in Texas. I did a postdoc here in San Antonio at the University of Texas Health Science Center. So I want to say howdy, everybody. I'm told that the College of Agriculture here was established in 1911, and that you've been celebrating this centennial now for a year and a quarter, and so you do things big here in Texas. During the time that I was doing that postdoc, I was really, really pleasantly surprised to learn that all of the tall tales that I had heard about Texas, when I moved here, I found out were really true. So things are big here in Texas. And we at USDA are also thinking big about our food and agricultural research, education, and extension system. And as some of you might know, and there's a big hint that's up here, this year, 2012, is the sesquicentennial, the 150th anniversary, not only of the establishment of the land-grant universities, but also of the establishment of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So USDA came in May, and the Morrill Act was signed into law in July of 1862. And we have had a wonderful 150 years of working cooperatively in partnership to celebrate this year. Anniversaries are a great opportunity to reflect on the past, see what our successes have been, pause and really take some pleasure in that. But also, anniversaries are a terrific opportunity to look to the future. You know, think about the challenges that are facing us today, and also then to think about how we should be renewing our commitments to face those challenges of the future. So we're thinking big these days because we not only have a long history to look back on, but also because the word big succinctly describes the challenges that are facing us. We're also thinking big because USDA isn't alone in facing these challenges. We're part of a national and a global network of food and agricultural producers, consumers, researchers, educators, and policymakers who are thinking about and working on solutions to the food and agricultural challenges of the 21st century. Food is necessary for life. It is a prerequisite, and that then is really a universal need. Everyone in the world has a stake in our food and agricultural future. So we have to think big so we can work together, and we're also going to need to work together. This is not a problem that any one scientific discipline can solve. It's not a problem that is only a production problem. And it's not a problem that the U.S. by itself is going to be able to solve. So we're thinking big because the times are changing and the challenges we face are changing, and also the tools that we have at our disposal are changing. With science and technology today, we can do things that were unheard of even 20 years ago. Just think about the range of instrumentation that's available to us on this wonderful campus. We can go from the subatomic level up to satellite imaging. We can go from understanding of systems biology to developing new synthetic life forms. So technology has opened many doors for us for innovative solutions to the challenges that we're facing. And we're also pushing forward and thinking big to put these innovations into practice while we're keeping an eye on what's the new challenges that are going to be emerging over this next generation. So when I think about the challenges that are facing us, I also think about how individual scientists have been able to make enormous societal changes. So thinking big, I think about somebody like Dr. Ruth Benarito, who after World War II, when we were starting to move away from cotton clothing into synthetics that wrinkled easily, she, as a research leader at USDA's Southern Regional Research Center, pretty much saved the cotton industry by pioneering a method of producing a wrinkle, stain, and flame-resistant cotton fabric, resulting in fabric with a better shape and appearance, the wash and wear that we take so advantage of today, and also the durable press options. Today, we consider Dr. Benarito to be a pioneer in the field of bioproducts, finding innovative uses for our renewable biological resources, in this case cotton, extremely important here in Texas. And the value and promise of bioproduct innovations are really immeasurable in a rapidly shrinking world, and where we're working with our partners to encourage the growth of bioproducts industries through aggressive research and development programs. Today, there are more than 3,000 companies producing more than 20,000 bioproducts that are made from grasses, from grains, from oil seeds, and agricultural waste rather than petroleum. And they range from things like cleaning supplies and personal care products to food packaging, to turf for football stadiums, for paving materials for roads. And the companies that manufacture these goods employ about 100,000 Americans, and many of these are based in rural communities. Just last week, President Obama announced $35 million over the next 3 years to support research and development in advanced biofuels, bioenergy, and high-value bio-based products. The Biomass Research and Development Initiative that goes by the acronym BIRDie is providing funding for consortia partners that focus on the integration of biomass feedstock development, biofuels, bio-based products production, and life cycle analysis to promote the growing bioeconomy. And this program has improved the positioning of advanced manufacturing technologies, specifically in rural areas, making near-term commercialization more viable. And faculty here at Texas A&M are an integral part of this biofuels research program with the work that you're doing on sorghum as a potential feedstock in more arid areas of the country, such as in the areas surrounding the campus here. Even the major petroleum companies are looking to bioproducts to expand their R&D efforts as well as their portfolios. And their knowledge about fuels and chemicals and feedstocks is also going to prove beneficial to the further development of these technologies. So it's not just a public investment that needs to be done, it's a public-private partnership that's going to develop this area of bioproducts for the future. So with the right focus and commitment, we can lay the foundation for an economy that's built to last, creating jobs, driving innovation, and giving access to all types of fuels, and gradually reducing our dependence on oil, and supporting incomes for farmers and ranchers. Now more than ever, Americans are ready to tap into the incredible potential of a bio-based economy. We're also thinking big, like Dr. Ed Nippling, a native Texan. Dr. Nippling first became interested in studying entomology when he was a student here at Texas A&M. And he would later go on with Dr. Raymond Bushland to pioneer a method for combating the screwworm fly before they invaded open wounds, a process that would eventually lead to their eradication from the continent. The screwworm is certainly a terrible pest, and they were incredibly destructive insects as they fed on the living tissue of cattle. And exposing mass-bred screwworms of different life stages to radiation, Dr. Nippling and Dr. Bushland developed a process for sterilization without affecting the mating behavior or causing other serious damage to the flies. Released into the field, these infertile flies could mate, but no progeny resulted, and thus driving down the pest population. The technique was used to systematically eliminate the screwworm from the entire United States by 1966, and just very recently in 1991, the US and Mexico were able to eradicate screwworm from Mexico. So the North American continent was freed from this terrible pest. The benefits to livestock are well over $1 billion a year, and the benefits of over more than 50 years, including economic and environmental factors, and the avoidance of the suffering, both to animals and to people, are really too large to estimate. For this pioneering work and what's known as the sterile insect technique, Drs. Bushland and Nippling were eventually awarded the World Food Prize. And the genius of this process of addressing insect control before it reaches damaging levels and using an area-wide approach rather than just a local focus was transformative, both literally as well as figuratively. Today at USDA, we certainly continue this work through research that's done in our intramural programs, as well as through the support of research and extension programs at universities like Texas A&M. The proud achievement of ridding the continent of the deadly screwworm fly and eliminating other diseases like bovine babesiosis by eradicating the invasive cattle tick are actually a prelude to the application of the most cutting-edge science to agriculture. Today, we're selecting the next generation of livestock through genetics, inventing environmentally safe RNAi insecticides that kill only the targeted pest, and taking advantage of our new knowledge of genomics to make the sterile insect technique cheaper and more widely accessible. The results of development of commercial genotyping tools continue to have a major impact on livestock research and have had applications in dairy, beef, sheep, and pork rearing. The bovine SNP assay is currently the de facto standard in cattle genomics research and genetic prediction use not only here in the US, but now globally. And since its inception in 2007, the sales of the SNP 50 assay alone have surpassed 700,000. Commercial AI companies are using these technologies to evaluate sires at birth, increasing the accuracy of each animal's genetic evaluation and almost eliminating the need for progeny testing. And this step alone decreases the cost of young sire evaluations from about $60,000 to less than $1,000, saving the industry millions of dollars annually, as well as years of data collection and evaluation. These achievements often, though, go unrecognized in the general public. I am always so struck by how modest our agricultural researchers are, and that they seem very pleased with the contributions that they make, recognizing that the food security that's provided through their work is recognition enough. And when I think about the way that we in the agricultural sciences do take this very modest approach, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes from George Washington Carver, where he said, "It's simply service that measures success." And I think that really sums up the ethic that so many of us in the agricultural sciences have. But I don't think it's hyperbole to point to the dramatic achievements that are coming from our investments in agriculture research. And a lot has been said about the achievements of a third great thinker who I want to mention, and I think all of you here are familiar with, and that's longtime Texas A&M faculty member Dr. Norman Borlaug, the founder and father of the Green Revolution. When Dr. Borlaug won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970, it was for his success in developing high-yielding wheat varieties that led to reversal of what had been severe food shortages currently at that time in India and Pakistan. He was credited with saving millions of lives. His work pointed to as eliminating recurring famines in South Asia, as well as helping the global food production outpace population growth. Later in life, he was very important in drawing global attention to the emerging new wheat stem rusts, and through his advocacy, the Gates Foundation became very interested in this very severe problem for wheat production globally, and have funded research to develop wheat stem rust-resistant varieties that have now been introduced into a number of different countries. Dr. Borlaug really did think big all of his life, and so I think he brought that to a new level. And today, with even more advanced breeding technology, we're working to sustainably intensify agricultural production to feed the growing population of the world. You are all, I'm sure, very much aware of the population projections by mid-century to 9 billion people, and that means that we're going to have to increase agricultural production by at least 70% and perhaps to double it to meet the needs of our future population, not only for food, but for fuel and for fiber. We're going to have to do this in the face of enormous challenges that include land degradation, zoonotic diseases, water scarcity, and climate change. And it's all the harder, a really huge stretch goal, when you also factor in the limited arable land that's available to bring into production, and also for the need to produce food and at the same time to meet the needs that are being demanded of agriculture for bioproducts. This challenge looms above all others and can only be met with the full strength of our global agricultural resources. The legacies of the 3 scientists that I mentioned and other pioneers who've revolutionized agriculture and made the world a better place actually gives me great hope. Adaptation and innovation are the names of the game in agriculture, and we've done it before. And I know we can do it again, and everyone here will have a role to play. I do believe that this question of how we can sustainably intensify agricultural production and do it in a way that will be long-term sustainable is the existential challenge for our next generation, those who are the students here today at Texas A&M. I'd like to introduce a 4th character here, and that character is the extension agent. In 1862, in his last message to Congress, President Lincoln referred to the Agriculture Department as the People's Department. And that ideal has guided our work over the past 150 years. And since its creation, Extension has been an enormous player in that role. The accomplishments of the pioneering scientists would have been limited if there had not been that capability through the Cooperative Extension Service to take the research information and to get it into the hands of agricultural producers in a way that they could implement. Their work has been tireless, and it has been really the key in transferring innovation from the laboratory to the farm and the community. Extension is certainly evolving, and today we're remaking Extension for the 21st century. Communication is different today than it was even 10 years ago, and the possibilities for sharing information have grown immensely. It's hard for me to imagine what the future holds in this realm. We were talking earlier today, and I shared a story with people about I'm actually married to an IT guy, and he bought in one of the first Apple home computers that were available, and he brought it home and he was so proud, and he was telling me about how sometime fairly soon we were going to be able to do all of our checking online. You know, that this computer was going to be able to enable us to do that, and I could not imagine it. And here we are about 20 years later, and we are. But we can imagine that through the sharing of quality, reliable information and ideas, we can redefine the way that science, including the agricultural sciences, is conducted, is planned, designed, implemented, and used in the future. We're trying to promote closer links between researchers and extension experts by funding integrated programs that support cooperation. We're also, through e-extension, looking to use all available tools, including IT technologies and the web, to deliver information to users. E-extension posts high-quality information on many, many important agricultural topics so that any web user has access. And e-extension is also proving to be enormously important for those outside of the U.S. who are accessing that information where it's applicable to their own situations. Recently, we've signed an agreement with an organization, global organization called Cabby Plantwise, to provide more access to our extension information, as well as research that's coming from the intramural agencies, and to make that available to them for application in their plant clinics worldwide. In recent years, extension has penetrated into new realms such as emergency preparedness and response, helping to keep the public informed during an emergency and then helping during recovery by offering good information on available assistance. We're also interested in how extension approach might be useful in managing and reducing conflict, in delivering medical services, and in meeting the needs of cities and suburbs. Again, not only here in the United States, but how the lessons that we've learned can be adopted globally. And with extension, IT is already radically changing the way we do research and will continue to do so. IT will play a role in facilitating the conduct of e-research and in the interpretation and dissemination of results. In many respects, it's already true that team science and virtuality is already with us, but it will be even more so as we move ahead. And one of the key success factors in moving ahead is going to be the sharing of scientific information. One good example of this is our germplasm collections. The gene banks support agricultural productivity and global food security goals by ensuring access to plant genetic resources in the face of daunting challenges such as crop diseases and pests, and expanding human population, environmental deterioration, and changing climates. Gene banks also safeguard the genetic resources and biodiversity that help provide farmers with access to new, more productive varieties of crops and animals. Communications advances allow for much easier and broader sharing of germplasm and germplasm data on a global scale. This in turn facilitates the breeding of crops and livestock more quickly, resistant to emerging threats, or contributing desirable nutritional characteristics. With its partners, USDA recently launched the Germplasm Resources Information Network Global, or what we call GRIN Global, a powerful but easy-to-use internet-based information management system for the world's plant gene banks. GRIN Global provides a powerful information tool to safeguard and utilize invaluable crop diversity. It also expands and streamlines access to USDA's Germplasm Resources Information Network, a database of more than 540,000 different samples of plants available from the National Plant Germplasm System. And this GRIN Global has now been translated into 6 languages. The CGIAR centers, the International Agricultural Research Centers, are moving to put their information about their germplasm collections into this system, and we're encouraging gene banks globally to also move to adopt it. This is going to be a wonderful way now for plant breeders, genetics researchers, genomics researchers to access easily the germplasm collections of the world to identify germplasm important for their research purposes. This is but one example of how data can be shared to advance research and development, and we're entering into an era when we can crowdsource agroecologic innovation, where genomic data is available to all who can benefit from it and further our collective research goals. In a globalized world with globalized challenges, I believe we can only benefit from more collaboration and more coordination and cooperation. This is one of the benefits of a food and agricultural research system that includes the public as well as the private sectors, government, university, and nonprofit research institutions. These institutions all bring different strengths, all necessary for meeting the challenges we face, and sharing data and resources helps us each to do better the mission that we have. The emergence of these technologies is timely because the challenges that we're facing aren't going to wait. The urgency of these challenges, I believe, is reflected in the agendas of the upcoming meetings of the G8 and the G20 countries that are going to occur in May and June of this year, where global food issues will be discussed at the highest levels of government. These global discussions are going to be looking at how are we setting our priorities in agricultural science? How are we funding our agricultural research and development? How are we going to monitor progress towards achieving that 70 to 100% increase in agricultural productivity? And how are we going to be able to share our science as we're moving forward so that we can achieve our goals in a way that is going to maximize the resources that we're going to be able to bring to bear? Ensuring food security is on everyone's mind, as is making sure our intensified agricultural production will be sustainable, will preserve our natural resources for generations to come. And to support the sustainability of the intensification of agricultural production, the National Agriculture Library is also coming forward, working more closely with academic, government, and private sector partners to develop a digital commons, another important platform for sharing information. One of the first priorities of the National Agriculture Library is to develop an LCA digital commons, a database of life cycle assessments of data sets and tools. The LCA digital commons is going to be science-based and will be important in helping us gauge the environmental as well as the energy carbon footprint impacts of products and services, and will, I believe, serve as the basis for environmental declarations, which are increasingly important in trade and in commerce. The LCA Digital Commons is going to make USDA data available widely, and I believe this is going to be very important for U.S. commodities as well as companies looking to export. One recent example involves soybeans. U.S. soybeans exported to Europe that are being used for biodiesel production in Europe are required to meet carbon reduction thresholds. U.S. soybeans failed to meet the required European benchmarks when the European models were used. These life cycle analyses are very highly sensitive to the data that are used as the basis for the life cycle analysis. And with data that reflected U.S. agricultural production practices related to soybeans, the life cycle analysis based on those data showed quite different results from the European ones, and the market was open for soybeans from the U.S. For export to Europe to meet and met their threshold requirements. All of these technologies are making possible an innovative agroecological approach to the shared global goal of sustainable intensification of agricultural production. As a recent report from the U.S. Agency for International Development and the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities makes clear, if we're going to feed the future and do so without damaging the environment, we're going to need to think big, we're going to need to think collaboratively, and we're going to need to be strategic, and most of all, we're going to need to be smart. Researchers around the world are working, as I'm speaking here today with you, to solve these challenges, but the challenges are going to continue beyond the lifespan of much of our current research. The best investment we can make then is in our most valuable commodity, and that's the next generation of food and agriculture and natural resources scientists. only with a rigorous commitment to science education in the food and agricultural disciplines are we going to be able to prepare students of today to become the world-class innovators of tomorrow. We need to instill early on an interest in the food and agricultural sciences, I think by showing the connections between what we do and their life, as well as what we do in the food and agricultural sciences and these big challenges that I've been talking about. It's really, I think, what will inspire the next generation. And we need to cast as wide a net as possible, drawing the best talent from across our very diverse population. And we need to spread the word about the value of the food and agricultural sciences and the really exciting careers that lie ahead. Technology gives us a great advantage in spreading that word, but nothing is better than hearing it from a friend, from a mentor, having the opportunity to work in a laboratory to see what the life of a scientist is like, or to work with an ag educator to see how the public responds to the information that an ag extension agent provides. So as you leave here, I hope you take with you an awareness of both the weight of the challenges that lie ahead, but also an inspiration from the great works that have been accomplished over this last century here at Texas A&M and over the last 150 years from the Department of Agriculture's perspective. And also that you have confidence that there's great work still to come. I think if we think big, we're going to get there, and it's going to take all of us working together. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you today. I would be happy to answer questions and start a discussion with this group. Dr. Hussey, are you going to moderate for us?
So do we have any questions for Dr. Woteki from the audience? I knew they'd start in the back, so let me run back here.
First of all, on?
It's on.
It's on. Well, welcome to Texas A&M.
Thank you.
And my name is Patricia Pietrantonio, professor of entomology. I was delighted that you mentioned 3 wonderful examples of how individual entomologies provided for food security in the world. I do not know if you're aware that at the individual level within the entomology and nematology program of the USDA, only 12 proposals or maybe less were funded. We are hungry for funds and we're hungry to provide food security through entomological research.
Sitting in the audience are members of the NERI board, the advisory committee to the Department of Agriculture, the secretary to me, and also to the Congress. Your question, your observation is very appropriate. We convened this morning starting at 8 o'clock, and one of the first things on the agenda for discussion was the key role that this advisory committee plays in assessing the relevance of our research and education programs, as well as the adequacy of those programs. So they, as part of their ongoing work, report both to the department and to the Congress on those 2 questions. The dilemma that we have been facing, as I know this audience is aware, that we have a decade, almost 2, of no real growth in the funding from the federal government in support of the food and agricultural sciences. I had the opportunity just last week to testify before the House Appropriations Committee in defense of the request that we're making for funding for 2013. In that budget request, we are put forward a request to increase the competitive grants program, AFRI, the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, by 23%, from a little bit over $260 million currently appropriated in 2012 to $325 million, which would get us almost halfway to the fully authorized level of $700 million. So from my perspective, the President's budget request shows a strong support for increasing agricultural research, particularly in the competitive grants area. We have to wait to see how Congress will deal with the severe budgetary problems that they're facing. But from the administration, we have put forward a very strong request in support of increasing competitive funding and getting us to that authorized level, we hope, in the near future of $700 million.
Next question. Don't be shy.
Dr. Woteki, thank you for your comments. Excuse my voice. I'm Jane Schuhart, Cooperative Extension Committee on Organization and Policy. And I'm wondering if you might comment on the link between food security and national security, and if that message might be stronger as we go to Congress in support of our funding for extension, of course, and for research and education. Thank you.
Jane, I think that's a great point. Increasingly, we are talking about agriculture, food security as part of our national security. The events of this last year in North Africa, the Arab Spring, have really highlighted the importance of food security when, a high price spike occurred and civil unrest in a number of different countries as a result. So I think there is growing recognition of how central food security is for global stability. I think also, as the message that was the main theme in my speech today demonstrates, the availability of food and of water are going to be incredible resources, constrained resources for the future, and could be the source of more conflict. So I do believe it's important to make the national security argument. It's also true when you think about what a huge proportion of our economy is based on agriculture. Economics Research Service uses the figure that 1 in 12 jobs in the U.S. is in the agricultural sector. And the vulnerabilities that we have to the introduction of infectious diseases in our livestock herds, of diseases that don't occur here in the United States, we're very vulnerable, as well as, the major crop diseases, we are also vulnerable. So you can also build the national defense argument from the perspective of the importance to the economy and how critical agriculture is as part of the critical infrastructure of the United States. So we do make those arguments, but you're absolutely right. I think it is important to bring these things to people's attention and to do it in a very constructive way, not in an alarmist way, but in a very constructive way, that, we are part of the critical infrastructure of the U.S. and we need to be considered as part of our national security.
Dr. Woteki, there is an excellent presentation. We appreciate your presentation. My question is, during the era of the global food security, are we missing to convey the message to the general public about the nutritional security how the nutrition plays a role in food security in terms of education part. I think we're missing a link. I think as a country, we need to do more of educational programs in nutritional and food security. And I would like your comment on that.
So is your question educational programs on nutrition and food safety as they relate to overall food security? Is
Yes.
that
Yes.
okay? Well, I frequently in doing presentations, I run down the 5 priority areas that we've established for our intramural and extramural research programs. And my theme today was really mostly based on the food security one. But quickly following that, food safety, both from a pathogen perspective as well as a chemical contaminant perspective, is usually the second priority that I talk about, because you aren't really going to have a secure food supply if it is conveying diseases to the population. The third priority that I talk about is human nutrition, because we're not going to have a healthy population if the food supply is not safe or sufficient. So I view those 3 priorities that we've established for our research programs as being really inextricably interwoven. We talk about them as separate priorities, but to achieve the overall goal of lifelong good health for a population of 9 billion by mid-century, we're going to have to be delivering against all 3 of those objectives.
I think we have time for about one more question. Does anyone have one more question they'd like to have Dr. Woteki answer, visit?
So I think us and the public have gotten fairly used to rapid technological change. We get an iPhone every year we get a new iPhone, we get a new car. But changes in agriculture seem to be a little bit slower because we rely on the biology. So I guess to what extent do we invest in preparing for the future as opposed to playing, catch up, like in terms of climate change or other topics coming down the road?
Good question. One of the big problems that we have in agriculture is that we've got so many short-term problems. We have the pest that's in this county this year, the marmorated stink bug that's big problem now on the East Coast, really devastating the fruit production. Wherever you go in the U.S., there is some invasive species, some specific disease or insect pest that's really causing severe economic problems for growers at that point. And so the near-term needs for a solution are really acute. In the science community, we really believe in, we need to also be doing at the same time some pretty long-term fundamental inquiry that is going to lay the basis for solutions to problems that are going to be occurring at some time in the future. So we always have this problem in trying to figure out what's the right balance in our research portfolio in that short-term versus long-term investment. And then overlay on that the new technologies. It's really fascinating. We were talking earlier this morning about extension programming and how the way that extension has evolved here in the U.S. Is that model, although it's admired in many other countries, has rarely been adopted fully the way it is here. But yet, with things like cell phones, and if you go out to really remote areas of, as I've been in Ghana, Cameroon, Uganda, a number of different countries in Southeast Asia, Central South America, farmers have got cell phones. There's a kiosk in every little hamlet that's selling minutes, but yet we're not taking advantage yet of using that technology to deliver information that farmers might be able to access via their cell phones. So we also need to be thinking about how we use these new technologies that are available and leapfrogging over the current methods of delivery so that we can get information, useful information, to farmers, producers, and others in other countries that, you know, might be a different model, but would be a 21st century model for extension. So all of those things, that thinking needs to be built into how we're responding to this challenge. So near term as well as long term, and how we take advantage of these new technologies.
Dr. Woteki mentioned a group that was here, the NARI board, also meeting in College Station. So could I get the members of the NARI board that are here in the office to National Advisory Group to stand up and just be recognized as a group? Milo, you can lead the, you can. Again, welcome to the campus of Texas A&M University. And Dr. Woteki, I'd like to present you a small token of our appreciation today. It's a book entitled Reflections of the Brazos Valley. So thank you very much, and please join me in thanking Dr. Woteki again.